There is the New York Ironman. Where is
You did the New York Ironman that
Yes.
it never happened again.
No. There's the one I won my age group with you. That one.
Oh yeah, the
I was
one in
happy
Key
about
West.
that one.
Yeah.
And where is Brazil's? I used to know how I had them all laid out.
There's so many now.
Yeah, I just don't remember. There it is. This is the Brazil. So there's the Brazil one right there.
Oh
That was a great experience and great race, wasn't it?
yes, that was.
We all had fun. And there's Badwater. There's the Badwater buckle.
That is.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Rich Wagon with rwcoaching.net, and today we are here with William William Corley, known as Chip Corley. He is a crazy athlete. Have a lot of under his belt. Ultramarathons, 3 Ironmans, right?
Yes.
3 Ironmans, a bunch of ultramarathons, including Badwater. He's a father of 3, run his own business, and he recently wrote a book. So, can you tell us how you manage all that?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, Richard. And I talk about in the book with you. Richard plays a role in my life, and he's in the book. And when I first met Richard, he invited me to come to the Saturday brick workout with his group. And at that point in time, it was beyond my scope and certainly well beyond my capabilities. But the only way that we can move forward is to take a risk and give it a try. And those were formidable training periods for me. And I remember getting off the bike and going to run, and just how impossible it was and how difficult it was. And the next thing you know, you showing up each week and giving it my best and being supported by the other athletes that were around me, all encouraging me and also pushing to the limit, that I would get stronger. And finally, after a number of months, I wasn't getting dropped anymore by the group, and I was actually able to keep up with the fast guys. Not pulling. I couldn't pull with the elite guys, but I could at least hang in the pace line with them. And so, to answer your question, that development, that strengthening of the body continued to translate in every area of my life. I was able to work more efficiently and put in more hours with a concentration level that was foreign to me. I got to the point where I could sit and read a book for 12 hours straight because the concentration was there. And so the way that I've been able to manage all of the tasks and undertakings and activities that I'm involved in is because the physicality brings a clarity of perception and an accuracy of response that I didn't have, that comes from pushing myself physically to a level that just enables me to perform at a better and higher level.
So you can say that endurance training, it's totally related with life, pretty much. Like, you can translate your fitness to your work on a, like, if your fitness is in a higher level, you most likely can perform almost every task in your life on a higher level as well.
To me, it's irrefutable. The answer is 100% that as the physical development increases, so does the quality of the output and the quantity of the output. And I've used a life coach over the years, and a renowned doctor and psychologist, and I spoke to him about the training over these years and so forth, and he said, well, demanding physical exertion is like a release valve.
Yeah.
and you just turn the valve and it lets all the pressure and the stress out. So in my case, not only was it interesting to develop physically to the best of my ability, but to be able to manage life stressors. And I've had real issues, and I know your life, Richard, and the challenges that you've dealt with, but you know that I've had some real problems in my own right, and being able to deal with those, I think that the release valve that strenuous training has given me has enabled me to have a better life, a more fulfilling life, and now I'm on the other side of those things, and so I'm able to channel that energy in areas that I think are constructive. For instance, I'm doing volunteer work for junior achievements, so I go into the high schools and teach personal finance and entrepreneurship, and it's a byproduct of having the capabilities and the energy to be able to do this, not because I have to, but because I want to.
So besides everything you do, you still do volunteer work?
I am doing volunteer work.
Okay, now I know that you did, under my belt, 3 Ironmans.
Yes.
So do you know how many ultras have you done now, or you lost count already?
I've done 10 100s.
10 100s?
So I think that when I
went Badwater.
In
Badwater.
And I did 10 100s, including Badwater 135 and the Brazil 135. So
okay.
I did 2 races in Brazil, where you're from, and that was the key influence. I did Florianopolis with you, and then I did the Brazil 135, and I certainly have got the closest friends that are Brazilian. And those races, the Brazilians are great athletes, and they know how to take it to the edge and beyond. And so I think that with the 50Ks and the 50 milers, those were only stepping stones for me to get to the target of the 100 milers. So I still do those. I mean, in the last 6 weeks, I did a 50K and a 50 miler to get myself really geared up towards the 100 miler that I did a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. And from all of those races, what do you think was the hardest one?
It's a great question. I've thought about this before, so I had to pause a moment to reflect on what my earlier answers were. And the hardest races I've ever did were a function of my conditioning. So when I started doing the hundreds, and my body had never been on its feet more than 50, 60 miles, the pain those last 25 miles was excruciating. So it was almost like a self torture that I put myself through, and it wasn't about the demands of the intensity of my exertion. There was no anaerobic deprivation during the ultras, but it was just a pure element of pain from my body being unaccustomed to not sleeping for 24 plus hours and having blisters all over the feet and unfortunately losing toenails. And so those early races were the most painful. Then what happens, and as you and I have spoken on numerous occasions, we talk about the intensity and the amount of effort that you put forth when you're trying to PR in an Ironman. Yeah. So when you start trying to do your personal best, and the times are getting to the point where they're competitive, well, there is an aerobic and also an anaerobic element there that you have to contend with. So for instance, when I ran Boston Marathon, and I was pushing myself to the limit, and it was extraordinarily painful. And so I think that even today, with what I would consider myself in decent condition, but if you said to me, I want you to go out and run a 5K sub 20 minutes, I think that would be the hardest thing I've done in an extended period of time. So I really do think it's relative in that regards. And for instance, if I was in the best shape of my life and I went and raced a 100 miler that was the conditions were good, the slope was accommodating, and the weather was helpful, but yet I had the flu, I might consider that the most difficult. So I think that developing, particularly for new athletes, this, the first 5K, the first half marathon, these things are extremely difficult. And learning how to manage that pain and rising above it is a function of, for my case, it takes a lot of years.
So that was my next question. Like how you do. We talk about pain like plenty of times, and especially like I remember when you went to cheer me up on one Ironman, that you drove like an hour and a half to just go see me, and I was in extremely pain over there. So how you deal with the pain? Like do you think about something during the race, or you just,
I want to answer the question two ways. First of all, how do you think about running 100 miles when you're in the race? Okay, I can go out and train tomorrow and do a tough run and really be challenged by it, and maybe it's 10 miles. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of running 100 is inconceivable to me, even when I've done it. So one is the pain. Secondly is the duration of being out there and being enslaved to your own goals to try to do 100 miles. So the first thing that I've had to learn to do, and it's taken me a lot of years, is to not project. Okay. And to stay in the moment. And then with the pain, what I do, I'm sure others do this, but this is my own anecdotal experience. I run diagnostics on myself, and I'm like, is there anything broken, or did we slip and fall? Is there any chronic issues? So when that isn't the case, then I take the pain and look at it in an isolated scenario and say, hey, it came on for whatever reasons and it will pass. As an example, people sometimes get headaches. But if you ask them where the headache came from, they say, I don't know, it just came on. Well, during the ultras, pain will come into your knees or your hips or your arms or in anywhere in your body, and it can be, at some point, it can be acute. But if nothing really occurred, I liken it to that headache. And by continuing to move, I've been able to generally get on the other side of the pain and be able to move forward. And then I'm not adverse to also taking a Tylenol or a Advil when I'm having pain.
So once somebody told me, like the guy was in a wheelchair, he told me like the difference between you and me, but everybody has problems. Do you think that going through that pain that you go through, like in a race, did that make you a better father, a better co-worker, a better husband? Can you relate that kind of stuff that you go through, that difficulty that you go through, those issues that you go through a race? Because for me, like once somebody asked me like, how you feel in an Ironman race? I'm like, you feel like life, because sometimes you up, sometimes you're down, and sometimes you're in pain, and sometimes it's just, like you just want to cross the finish line. So do that make any? I know like on the ultras you go for a lot more hours than an Ironman, but did that make like a big difference in your life and how you are and how you interact with people or interact with your co-workers and so on and so forth?
I think that the answer may be yes for a lot of people, but I don't think the answer is yes for me.
No?
I think that the attributes that come from this, mm-hmm. for me, are really more akin to the training. The structure of the training, I think, has been the most beneficial to me. In my book, I use the word structure more than I use the word discipline. And the reason I use that word is because that seems to have been the magic formula for me. I'll give you an example.
That was my next question about discipline. So
I'll give you an example. You gave me a schedule.
Yeah.
You would speak to me about the schedule. You would raise the intensity of the schedule. You would deal with my psychology and my difficulty in digesting the schedule. But by having that in the program and so forth, it became structured for me. So on Mondays I did this, on Tuesdays I did that. So it didn't take as much discipline for me because this was my structure. And I have found that through structure that there's a pattern of success, as I would describe it, from having structure. Like, for instance, we have these weights here on my desk.
That was one of my questions too.
And
I mentioned you on one of my articles on my website, and I said, like, I know a guy who, you know, because I'm talking about sitting for a long period of time, and I said, like, I know a guy who have weights on his office where every now and then he stops to do some exercises because it's, you know, like the body was made to move. You're sitting down all day, it's not ideal. So if you stop and do a few exercises, but I'm curious to say what you have to say about those weights. That was just my opinion, but.
Well, I enjoy going to the gym, but time is limited. And I think that I have learned to manage my time fairly efficiently. So the weights are here. I like your rationale that it's good to be able to break the monotony of sitting at a desk, but they're here specifically so that I do the weight training. And when they're on the desk, that means I haven't finished my sets. So actually, I used two 25-pound weights, and when I started, I couldn't even lift 25 pounds. But what I do here at the desk is I take these and I do 3 sets of these. These are called squat thrust, and I do 20 of those, 3 sets, and then I do curls. I do 20 of those at 3 sets. So right now I still have 3 sets of curls to go. I haven't finished, I finished the squat thrust, but those sit on the desk until I'm done. And by the way, they sometimes annoy me.
See, there's no excuse. Now I think we are covering pretty much everything, but can you tell a little bit more about your book, or is it just a secret?
Sure, I'll tell a little bit about that. I'd also like to say something else that baffles me about this training and this endurance world. If I choose to not train, okay, and I am not one who has taken off too many days in a row. Quite very, very few.
I remember we used to fight to make you rest.
But what's interesting is if I do take off, for instance, I raced a 100-miler, I have to slowly come back, or I could affect myself negatively. I'll notice that my body will start feeling stiff, okay, and I don't feel as comfortable. Mm-hmm. So then, as soon as I start training back, and I can tell this clearly because I just am going through that now, I start working out. It's difficult and to come back from a race, as you know. And then as you're starting to reacclimate yourself to training again, there's a lot of soreness and fatigue that's associated with it. So what's fascinating to me, when I get up in the morning and I'm stiff and don't feel very good, just this week, and I rode my bike, I actually rode with Ryan. He hadn't been on his bike in a while, and he came out and rode with me. But after I rode that bike, I didn't feel very good. I wasn't right. I did 25 miles easy on the bike, but after it was over, I felt great. And I couldn't have told you that with all of these years and the experience, I couldn't have told you after that bike that I'd feel great. But that's the benefits of this game. So for someone who is sedentary, I think that they can be as uncomfortable as someone who's training and is sore at the moment.
Exactly, yeah.
But by getting up and doing something, like you said, moving, and I'm a big proponent for just movement. It makes you feel better. Then I think also I would say, not to endorse you, but because I've seen it. In my book, I talk about mentorship. And I think that to get into really decent shape, you need a mentor. You need a coach. Because the coach can take you much further than you believe you can go. And the coach will take you further than you can even imagine, and your conditioning will be at a much higher level. So the plug on the book. The book is called Financial Fitness: The Journey from Wall Street to Badwater. And in each chapter of the book, I split it up into sections. The first section, I talk about how I ran my first 5K, how I did my first half a marathon, all the way to the Ironman, all the way to Badwater, and my journeys in the endurance world. The second section of each chapter talks about how to run a business and how to make money and how to invest in the stock market and how I have done these things to be able to achieve a certain financial position where I can enjoy my life, and how other people who can employ these same principles and take it through the steps that I have gone through, that they can achieve a very satisfactory financial success within their own right. So that's what the book's about, and it should be out in July.
Nice.
And as I said, Richard, you're in there, so you'll have to buy a copy.
Yeah, of course.
But I do think that in the mentorship, it's very important that we have, and I think in some regards, I am Richard's financial mentor. And so, and people that have been there and done that, I think, are critical in our life. And I think that it's empowering to be around people, mentors, that can take you to places that you aspire to go.
As one thing I always say, like, you want to associate, be around people that's going to bring you up, not bring you down. And for me, one of the greatest quality a person can have is to be coachable. You know, like to have a mentorship, and, you know, like, it's not like they need to follow the plan all the time, but, you know, having someone to discuss that and how they can get better and brainstorm, you can achieve a lot more when you have somebody next to you, accountable, and, like you said, pushing you, raising the bar little by little. So another thing I like to say, it's, you see the weights here, but Chip sometimes is still, I don't know if you still do it, but sometimes he pulled the tire to work 2 miles out and back. So literally,
yeah,
there's not excuse in this world to not do anything.
I'll be pulling the tire this weekend.
All right, see? All right, guys, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy talking with, like, for me, Chip, it's like, really, I look forward to you, like, quite a bit, not only because of what you're achieving in sports, but what you're achieving in business, and I take my hat out for you, like, any day. And like I said, when we talked about it, I remember you that I told you can break 12 hours, and you're like, are you freaking out of your mind? And you went there, and then you did like 11:41. Yeah, and
I was so proud.
You smoked so many young kids, and I was so happy with that. And like I said, I take my hat out for you, for what you have built, for the family you have built, and for the
my Brazil medals right over there.
Yeah, I'm gonna record it afterwards. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, guys, check it out. Feel good.